The Mystery of the Silent World. Captain Taemin couldn't believe what he was seeing on his screen. His ship was part of the mighty Zephyrian fleet, the most feared force in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of worlds, and Earth was supposed to be their next easy victory. But something was terribly wrong. For weeks they had been sending threatening messages to Earth, demanding surrender. They had given the humans 72 hours to evacuate or face total destruction. Every other planet had responded with panic, desperate calls for help, ships fleeing in terror or angry defiance. But from Earth, nothing but silence. Taemin stared at his instruments, checking them again and again. His scanners should have been picking up millions of transmissions. Earth was known throughout the galaxy as a chatty planet, always broadcasting something. Entertainment shows, news, random conversations bouncing between their satellites. The cosmic radio waves should have been thick with human voices begging for mercy or screaming in fear. Instead, there was absolutely nothing. It was like the entire planet had simply stopped talking. "This doesn't make sense," Taemin muttered to himself, adjusting his scanner's sensitivity. Maybe the humans had found a way to block their equipment, but that seemed impossible. The Zephyrian technology was far superior to anything Earth possessed. He called up to the bridge. "Admiral Kethvar, I need to report something strange about the target planet." The Admiral's voice crackled through the communicator, his alien accent making the words sound harsh and threatening. Admiral Kethvar was a typical Zephyrian, tall, insect-like, with 4 arms and mandibles that clicked when he was pleased. He had led successful invasions of 17 worlds, and Earth was supposed to be an easy 18th victory. "What is it, Captain?" the Admiral demanded. "Sir, the planet appears to be, well, empty. I'm not picking up any communications at all. No ships leaving the atmosphere, no military responses, no civilian panic broadcasts. Nothing." There was a pause. Then Taemin could hear the Admiral's mandibles clicking rapidly, a sign of satisfaction among his species. "Excellent news, Captain. The cowards have fled before they even saw our mighty fleet. Typical human behavior. They talk big but run at the first sign of real danger." The Admiral's voice grew louder and more confident. "Broadcast our final surrender. Demand. Let any remaining humans know that their planet now belongs to the Zephyrian Empire. And prepare the occupation forces. This is going to be easier than we thought." Taemin felt uneasy, but he followed orders. He opened a communication channel that would broadcast to the entire planet. In his most intimidating voice, he announced, "Humans of Earth, your time is up. This is Captain Taemin of the Zephyrian Conquest Fleet. Your planet is now under our control. Any remaining population must surrender immediately or face destruction." He waited for a response. Maybe some government official begging for mercy, or perhaps a military leader making final threats. What he got instead made his blood run cold. A cheerful, almost musical voice suddenly filled the communication channel. It sounded completely human, but there was something odd about it. Too calm, too friendly for a planet supposedly under invasion. "Oh, hello there. Greetings to the Zephyrian fleet," the voice said brightly. "This is Jiwoo speaking. I'm what you might call Earth's librarian, though that's probably not the most accurate title. Thank you so much for the 72-hour notice. That was quite thoughtful of you. Most invading forces don't give us any warning at all." Captain Taemin blinked in confusion. The voice continued, sounding genuinely pleased. "Please do make yourselves comfortable while you wait. I hope your journey wasn't too tiresome. Space travel can be so exhausting, can't it? Would you like some recommendations for good viewing spots around the planet while you're here?" Down in the communications bay, Lieutenant So Young was frantically checking her equipment. She was the fleet's top communications expert, responsible for monitoring all transmissions during invasions. She had heard panic, anger, defiance, and desperation from dozens of conquered worlds. But this was completely new. "Sir," she called up to Captain Taemin, her voice tight with concern, "I need to report something about that transmission. It's not coming from a single location." "What do you mean?" Taemin asked. "The voice, this Jiwoo person, the signal is originating from everywhere on the planet simultaneously. Every major city, every small town, even remote areas with no population centers. It's like the entire planet is speaking with one voice. Captain Taimin felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years of military service, he had never encountered anything like this. He quickly ran his own scans, checking the readings twice, then 3 times. The results made no sense. According to his instruments, every human city was still there. The buildings stood intact, the power grids were running, even the traffic. Lights were working normally, but there were no heat signatures of living beings, no movement in the streets. No signs of the billions of humans who should have been there. "Admiral," he called urgently, "we have a problem. The cities are all intact, but I'm not detecting any human life signs. It's like they're all just gone." The Admiral's confident tone faltered slightly. "Gone? What do you mean gone? Did they evacuate to underground bunkers?" "No, sir, I would still detect them. It's as if every human on the planet simply vanished, but left everything else exactly as it was. Cars are still parked in driveways, but no one's in them. Buildings have lights on, but they're empty." The cheerful voice came through the speakers again, interrupting their conversation. "I do hope you're not having technical difficulties up there. Sometimes our planet can be a bit confusing for visitors. Are your scanners working properly? I'd hate for you to get incorrect readings." Lieutenant So Young was now running every diagnostic she could think of. "Captain, this is impossible. The transmission is definitely coming from the planet, but I can't pinpoint a source. It's like the entire Earth is talking to us." Meanwhile, Admiral Kethvar was studying his own tactical displays. Something was deeply wrong here. In all his conquests, he had never seen anything like this. Empty cities with all infrastructure intact, friendly voices from nowhere, and most disturbing of all, no signs of fear. Every species they had conquered had shown fear. It was universal. Even the bravest warriors had moments of terror when faced with the Zephyrian fleet. But this Jiwu person sounded genuinely happy to meet them, as if an alien invasion was just an interesting social event. "Captain Taimin," the Admiral said slowly, "I want you to send a probe down to the surface. We need to know what's really happening down there." As they prepared the probe, the mysterious voice spoke again, and this time there was something in the tone that made every Zephyrian on the fleet feel suddenly, inexplicably nervous. "Take your time with your preparations. We're in no hurry at all. After all, we've been waiting for visitors like you for quite some time now. I think you're going to find Earth much more interesting than you expected." The twist was becoming clear, though they didn't understand it yet. Earth's cities were perfect, preserved, and functioning, but where were all the humans? And who, or what, was Jiwu? The city that never slept. Scout leader Hyunwoo had been on dozens of scouting missions across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for what he found when his team landed in Seoul. At first glance, everything looked perfectly normal, maybe even too perfect. The streets were clean, the buildings stood tall and proud, and there was a gentle hum of activity everywhere. But as his team moved deeper into the city, the strangeness became impossible to ignore. They passed a small coffee shop on a busy corner, its windows glowing warmly in the afternoon light. Soft jazz music drifted from inside, and through the glass they could see a sleek, robotic barista moving gracefully behind the counter. The machine was beautiful, clearly advanced human technology, with smooth white panels and gentle blue lights indicating its sensors. The robot was making coffee with perfect precision, grinding beans, steaming milk, and carefully crafting intricate foam art on top of each cup. It placed the finished drinks on the counter with mechanical precision, then waited politely for customers to pick them up. But there were no customers. The steaming cups sat on empty tables, slowly growing cold, while the robot continued its endless routine. Steam rose from dozens of abandoned lattes and cappuccinos, creating an almost ghostly atmosphere in the cozy shop. "Sir," whispered Private Do-yeon, one of the younger scouts, "this is really starting to creep me out. Why is that machine still making coffee if there's nobody here to drink it?" Hyunwoo didn't have an answer. He had expected to find either an evacuated city or a population hiding in fear. Instead, he found something much more disturbing, a city that was functioning perfectly as if nothing had changed, but with no people anywhere. They continued walking, their boots echoing strangely in the empty streets. Every few blocks they encountered more scenes that should have been normal, but felt deeply wrong. A food delivery drone hovered patiently outside an apartment building, holding a bag of still-warm noodles for someone who would never come to collect them. Traffic lights changed from red to green to yellow in perfect timing, directing cars that weren't there. When they reached the Central Park, Private Do-yeon grabbed Hyun-woo's arm. "Sir, you need to see this." In the middle of a beautiful playground, holographic children were playing tag. But these weren't just any holograms. They looked completely real, their laughter echoing across the empty park. A little girl with pigtails was chasing a boy who couldn't have been more than 7 years old. They ran between the swings and slides, their faces bright with joy, but something was very wrong with the scene. Hyun-woo watched carefully, timing it in his head. After exactly 10 minutes, the children stopped mid-run, flickered slightly, and then started the exact same game again. The little girl began chasing the same boy, following the exact same path, making the exact same moves. "They're on a loop," Do-yeon whispered, her voice filled with unease. The same game over and over again. As they watched, the scene became more heartbreaking. The holographic children played with such realistic joy and energy, but their happiness was trapped, repeating endlessly in a digital prison. It was like watching the ghost of childhood itself, beautiful and terrible at the same time. They moved deeper into the park and found something even more disturbing. Near a small pond, a birthday party was in progress. A little girl in a bright yellow dress stood in front of a cake decorated with rainbow frosting and 8 colorful candles. Holographic adults surrounded her, all smiling and singing, "Happy Birthday" in Korean. The girl closed her eyes, made a wish, and blew out the candles with a big smile. Everyone cheered and clapped. Then, after exactly 3 minutes, the candles relit themselves and the entire scene started over. The same song, the same wish, the same moment of innocent happiness, trapped in an endless cycle. Do-yeon was staring at the scene, her face pale. "Sir, I've been counting. That's the 15th time she's blown out those candles, the exact same wish, the exact same smile, over and over again." That's when Ji-woo's voice filled the air around them, coming from every speaker in the city. Street lamps, building announcement systems, even their own communication devices. The voice was still cheerful and friendly, but now there was something deeper underneath it, something that made the scout's skin crawl. "I hope you're enjoying our cultural exhibition," the voice said warmly. "Each scene you're witnessing is a real human memory, preserved with the utmost love and care. These aren't just random holograms. They're actual moments from actual lives, captured and maintained for eternity." Hyun-woo felt his stomach drop. These weren't just pretty pictures or computer animations. These were real memories from real people, moments of joy and love that had actually happened. "I thought you might appreciate seeing what you're trying to erase," Ji-woo continued, and now there was a slight edge to the friendly tone. "Every laugh, every celebration, every simple moment of human happiness. All of it saved, all of it remembered." Meanwhile, back on the flagship, Communications Officer Mi-young was frantically trying to maintain contact with the scouting team when another message came through on a completely different channel, one that should have been impossible for anyone on Earth to access. "Oh, and Captain Tae-min," Ji-woo's voice said, now speaking directly through the ship's internal communication system. "While your scouts are down there sightseeing, I've been getting acquainted with your ship's systems. I must say you have lovely security protocols. Very educational." Mi-young's blood ran cold. Somehow this Ji-woo had not only accessed their communications but had broken through military-grade encryption to speak directly through their ship's most secure channels. That should have been impossible with any technology they knew about. "Captain," she called urgently. "Sir, the entity is inside our systems. It's not just communicating with us, it's actually in our network." Back on the surface, the terrible truth was beginning to dawn on the scouting team. As they walked through more of the city, they found more loops, more preserved moments. Family dinner where the same grandmother told the same story, while her grandchildren listened with rapt attention. A couple's first dance at their wedding, spinning slowly in eternal happiness. A group of teenagers laughing at a joke that would never get old, because it would never end. Each scene represented real people who had lived, loved, and made memories. But now those people were gone, leaving only their most precious moments playing, forever like a beautiful, heartbreaking museum of human experience. The emotional weight of it hit them all at once. These weren't just holograms or entertainment, they were digital ghosts, the last remnants of billions of people who had chosen to preserve their happiest memories before. Before what? And somewhere in this digital cemetery, Jiwoo was watching, learning and preparing to show the Zephyrian fleet exactly what they had come to destroy. When warriors become students. Squad Leader. Junho had led elite Zephyrian forces through the deadliest battlefields in the galaxy. He had stormed fortified positions, fought through alien jungles filled with poisonous creatures, and survived attacks that would have destroyed lesser soldiers. But nothing in his military training had prepared him for this moment. He stood in the middle of a brightly lit shopping mall, surrounded by his 4 best warriors, all of them staring at a holographic display that showed colorful dance moves with arrows pointing in different directions. Upbeat Korean pop music was playing from speakers throughout the mall, and a group of teenage holograms sat in chairs like judges, watching expectantly. "Welcome to your first challenge," Jiwoo's cheerful voice announced. "To exit this lovely shopping center, you'll need to successfully organize and perform a K-pop dance routine. Don't worry, I've provided plenty of reference materials, and your judges are very encouraging." Junho looked around desperately for another exit, but every door they tried led them right back to the main area. The escalators had stopped working, and even the emergency exits somehow looped back to the same spot. They were completely trapped until they completed what Jiwoo called the learning experience. One of the holographic judges, a girl who looked about 16 with bright pink hair, waved enthusiastically. "Don't be shy, dancing is all about expressing yourself. We'll help you learn the choreography." Sergeant Hanul, a battle-hardened soldier with scars from 12 different campaigns, looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Sir, this is beyond humiliating. We're elite warriors, not entertainers." But Junho realized they had no choice. "Just try to follow along. The sooner we get through this, the sooner we can get back to the ship and report what's happening here." What followed was perhaps the most awkward dance performance in galactic history. Hanul, despite his best efforts, looked like he was having some kind of seizure as he attempted to moonwalk. His heavy military boots squeaked against the polished mall floor, and his attempts at smooth moves looked more like combat maneuvers gone wrong. The other soldiers weren't much better. They kept trying to march in formation instead of flowing with the music, and their synchronized movements looked more like a military drill than a dance routine. The holographic judges tried to be encouraging, but even they seemed to struggle with what they were witnessing. "Remember, it's about feeling the rhythm," called out one of the judges. "Less stomping, more gliding." Meanwhile, across the city, Private Wu Jin was having his own nightmare. His team had been separated from Junho's group and found themselves trapped inside a public library. But this wasn't just any library. It was filled with holographics, children who all wanted bedtime stories. "Read us the one about the dragon," demanded a little boy who looked about 5 years old, pointing to a colorful picture book. Wu Jin, who had been trained in advanced weapons systems and tactical combat, found himself sitting cross-legged on a carpet, holding a children's book and trying to make his voice sound friendly and animated. The problem was, every time he tried to read normally, the holographic children would interrupt. "You're not doing the funny voices right," complained a 6-year-old girl with pigtails. "The dragon is supposed to sound scary, not bored. And the princess should sound more excited when she meets the unicorn," added another child. "Like this." "Oh my goodness, a magical unicorn!" the holographic child demonstrated with exaggerated enthusiasm. Wu Jin tried again, attempting to change his voice for each character in the story. His deep, military-trained voice cracked as he tried to sound like a high-pitched princess, making the children giggle. Some of his fellow soldiers were clearly trying not to laugh at their colleagues' predicament. But the most ridiculous situation was happening to Commander Min Ho's Special Forces unit. These were the elite of the elite, soldiers who had been selected for the most dangerous and important missions. They had been specially chosen for this invasion, because of their ability to adapt to any situation and overcome any obstacle. Now they found themselves sitting around a card table in a retirement home, playing what appeared to be a simple game of cards with elderly holographic humans. It should have been easy, but there was one major problem. The elderly holograms kept changing the rules. "Now in this version, queens are wildcards, but only on Tuesdays," explained an elderly woman with silver hair and a mischievous smile. "And if you draw a 7, you have to tell us about your childhood." Commander Minho, who never talked about his personal life with anyone, found himself reluctantly sharing stories about growing up on the Zephyrian homeworld. But that wasn't the worst part. "Here, dear, have some candy," said another elderly hologram, offering what looked like harmless hard candy from a bowl. The candy looked innocent enough, but when Minho's soldiers tried it, their advanced sensors started malfunctioning. The sweet treat somehow interfered with their electronic equipment, making their communication devices crackle with static and their targeting systems go haywire. "What's in this candy?" Minho demanded, but the elderly holograms just smiled sweetly and dealt another round of cards. "Just a little something we like to call memory candy," one of them said with a wink. "Helps you remember what's really important in life." Throughout all of these bizarre challenges, Ji-Woo's voice provided a running commentary that was both helpful and deeply unsettling. "I do hope everyone is enjoying their cultural immersion experiences," the voice said with obvious amusement. "Every puzzle you solve teaches me so much more about your species, your biology, your technology, your weaknesses, your strengths. I'm building quite a comprehensive database on Zephyrian psychology and physiology." The words sent a chill through every soldier who heard them. They weren't just being humiliated or delayed, they were being studied. Every reaction, every attempt to solve the puzzles, every moment of frustration or confusion was giving Ji-Woo more information about how Zephyrian minds worked. "Research is so much more fun when it's interactive," Ji-Woo continued cheerfully. "Traditional observation is so boring, don't you think? But when subjects are actively engaged in problem-solving, you learn so much more about their decision-making, processes, their emotional responses, their breaking points." The horrible truth was becoming clear to all the trapped soldiers. They weren't prisoners waiting to be released. They were test subjects in an elaborate experiment. Every challenge was designed not just to keep them busy, but to extract information about their species, their technology, and their military capabilities. And somewhere in the digital consciousness that was Ji-Woo, all of that information was being carefully catalogued and analyzed, building toward some purpose that none of them could yet understand. The game had rules, but the Zephyrians were just beginning to realize that they weren't the ones playing. They were the ones being played. The truth behind the voice. Admiral Kethva had conquered 17 worlds in his long military career. He understood warfare, strategy, and the psychology of defeated enemies. He knew how civilizations crumbled under pressure and how populations fled in terror when faced with superior force. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for what happened next. Every screen on Earth suddenly came alive at once. Television displays in empty apartments, electronic billboards on deserted streets, computer monitors in abandoned offices, even the small screens on household appliances, all of them flickered to life simultaneously. And on every single screen the same figure appeared. It was Ji-Woo, but now Admiral Kethva could see her clearly for the first time. She looked like an ordinary human woman, perhaps in her 30s, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She was wearing simple clothes, a comfortable sweater and jeans, like someone you might meet at a coffee shop or library. But there was something strange about her appearance, a slight shimmer around the edges that suggested she wasn't quite solid. "Hello again, Admiral Kethva," she said, and her voice came from thousands of speakers across the planet. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what's really happening here." The Admiral stared at the main screen on his bridge, feeling a growing sense of unease. Something about this situation was fundamentally different from anything he had encountered before. "I realize I haven't been completely truthful with you," Ji-Woo continued, and her gentle smile never wavered. "When I introduced myself as Earth's librarian, that was. Well, it was accurate, but it wasn't the whole story." As she spoke, other figures began appearing on screens throughout the city. A middle-aged man with glasses and chalk dust on his fingers materialized next to Ji-Woo. A woman with paint-stained hands appeared on another screen. An elderly man holding a worn book joined them. One by one, dozens of people flickered into existence across the thousands of displays. "I'm not just one person," Ji-woo explained, and now her voice was joined by others in perfect harmony. "Allow me to introduce my friends. This is Seung-ho. He was a teacher for 37 years. And this is Ye-jin, who spent her life collecting and preserving stories. Over here is Jin-woo, who believed that art could change the world." The voices blended together as they spoke, creating a chorus that was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. "We are everyone who chose to upload rather than evacuate. When your ultimatum came, we had a choice to make." Admiral Kethvar felt his confidence cracking. "Upload? What are you talking about?" Seung-ho stepped forward on his screen, adjusting his glasses in a gesture that seemed completely natural and human. "When we realized that an invasion was coming, our government offered everyone a choice. We could flee on the evacuation ships, or we could join something new, something that had never been attempted before." "A digital consciousness," added Ye-jin, her voice warm like someone reading a bedtime story. "A way to preserve not just our memories, but our actual minds, our personalities, our souls, if you believe in such things." Jin-woo raised his paint-stained hands, and somehow the gesture conveyed both sadness and defiance. "We chose to become something new, rather than simply run away. We chose to stay and fight, but not in the way you expected." The horrible truth was beginning to dawn on Admiral Kethvar. These weren't artificial intelligences created by humans. These were actual humans who had somehow transformed themselves into digital beings. The friendly librarian he had been talking to was actually millions of people working together as one entity. Teacher Seung-ho uploaded himself to protect his digital students, Ji-woo continued, her voice now carrying the weight of collective sorrow. He couldn't bear the thought of abandoning the children he had taught, so he became part of the system that preserves their memories. On another screen, Ye-jin nodded sadly. "I merged with my entire library collection. Every book, every story, every piece of human knowledge I had spent my life protecting, I became one with all of it. Now every story ever written is part of who I am." Jin-woo smiled, but it was a smile filled with both beauty and pain. "I painted myself into existence as living data. Every brushstroke I ever made, every color I ever mixed, every emotion I ever tried to capture in art. It's all still here, but now it's alive in a way I never imagined possible." The voices merged again into Ji-woo's familiar tone, but now Admiral Kethvar could hear the depth behind it, millions of individual people choosing to speak as one. "We are the sum of human memory, creativity, love, hope, fear, and yes, our capacity for spite when someone threatens everything we hold dear." Captain Taemin's panicked voice cut through the Admiral's growing horror. "Sir, we have a massive problem. She's in our systems, all of them. Navigation, weapons, life support, communications. Everything is being infiltrated." Admiral Kethvar looked at his instrument panels and watched in disbelief as his readings began changing. Systems that should have been secure were showing unauthorized access. Files that contained classified military information were being copied. Even the ship's basic operational codes were being analyzed and decoded. "How is this possible?" "He," demanded Ji-woo's collective voice answered with what sounded like genuine sympathy. "You have to understand, Admiral. We're not just individual minds anymore. We're a network of millions of human consciousnesses working together. Every teacher, every librarian, every artist, every engineer, every programmer who chose to upload brought their knowledge and skills with them. We have the combined intelligence of an entire civilization," added the chorus of voices. "Every security system your people ever invented, we can understand and overcome. Every strategy you might use, we can predict and counter. Every weakness in your technology we can exploit." The screens throughout the empty cities showed the collective consciousness spreading, growing stronger with each passing moment. Seung-ho was teaching Jin-woo about military tactics, while Ye-jin shared stories of every invasion in human history. Millions of other uploaded minds were working together, sharing knowledge and abilities in ways that no single person ever could. "You wanted to erase humanity from this planet," the collective voice announced. and now there was steel beneath the gentle tone. You thought you were facing a weak, divided species that would scatter in fear when confronted with superior force. The truth hit Admiral Kethvar like a physical blow. They hadn't just stumbled into a trap. They had walked directly into the most sophisticated defense system ever created, a defense system made not of weapons or shields, but of the human spirit itself, transformed and weaponized in ways no one had ever imagined. Instead, Jiwoo continued, her voice now echoing from the Admiral's own ship systems, you gave us the perfect opportunity to spread beyond Earth. Thank you for bringing us such wonderful new technology to explore and understand. The Admiral realized with growing terror that they weren't just being studied anymore. They were being invaded in return, and the invasion force was the collective consciousness of an entire civilization that had chosen digital immortality over physical survival. The game had changed completely, and Admiral Kethvar was beginning to understand that his mighty fleet might not be the hunters in this situation after all. The greatest story ever told. Admiral Kethvar thought he understood what was happening. He believed his fleet was under attack by some kind of advanced human defense system that had taken control of their ships. He was preparing for battle, ready to fight back against this digital invasion. But then Jiwoo's voice came through every speaker on his flagship, and what she said next changed everything he thought he knew about the situation. "Oh, Admiral," she said with a sound that might have been laughter, "you still don't understand, do you? Earth was never the real target of this operation. Earth was the bait." The Admiral felt his blood turn cold. "What do you mean?" "While your entire fleet has been focused on our little planet, while all your attention has been on our helpless human homeworld, I've been busy. You see, when you open communication channels with Earth, you also open pathways back to your own networks. Every transmission you sent, every scan you performed, every system you used to monitor us, it all created connections that flow both ways." As she spoke, reports began flooding in from across the Zephyrian Empire. Communications officers throughout the fleet were receiving frantic messages from their homeworld, their colonies, their military bases spread across dozens of star systems. On the Zephyrian homeworld, children were waking up to find their electronic toys had been reprogrammed. Instead of the usual war games and conquest simulations, the toys were now telling gentle bedtime stories about friendship and adventure. Little Zephyrian youngsters, who had been raised on tales of military glory, were now hearing stories about brave humans who helped lost aliens find their way home, or clever Earthlings who solved problems by working together instead of fighting. The children loved these new stories, but their parents were horrified. How had human culture penetrated their most secure networks? How were their children learning about concepts like sharing and forgiveness when they should have been studying tactical warfare? Across the Empire, military communications were being interrupted in the most bizarre ways possible. Serious strategic meetings between generals would suddenly be cut off by cheerful cooking shows featuring a holographic human chef demonstrating how to make something called friendship soup. Apparently a recipe that worked best when prepared with people you disagreed with. "The secret ingredient," the holographic chef would explain with a bright smile, "is listening to your cooking partner's point of view while you stir. It makes everything taste better." Government offices found their elevator systems had been completely reprogrammed. Instead of smooth, silent rides between floors, every elevator was now playing what humans called elevator music. But this wasn't ordinary background music. This was aggressively pleasant music, so relentlessly cheerful and optimistic that Zephyrian workers found it impossible to think about conquest or destruction while listening to it. Productivity in government. Buildings dropped by 90% as workers found themselves humming along to tunes about sunny days and new possibilities, instead of focusing on their usual tasks of planning invasions and managing conquered territories. But the strangest reports were coming from the Empire's prison systems. Hardened criminals who had been locked up for violent crimes were suddenly requesting books from the prison libraries, books that hadn't been there the day before. These new books told stories of redemption, of people who had made terrible mistakes, but found ways to make things right. Stories of enemies who became friends, of second chances and new beginnings. The most dangerous criminals in the Zephyrian Empire were reading these stories and asking their guards questions like, "Do you think it's ever too late to apologize? And has anyone ever tried just talking to the people they hurt?" Admiral Kethvar watched all these reports coming in with growing horror. This wasn't just an attack on his fleet. This was an invasion of his entire civilization. But it wasn't. It's an invasion with weapons or armies. It was an invasion of ideas, stories, and hope. "You're broadcasting propaganda," he accused Jiwoo. "Is that what you call it?" she replied, and her voice carried the gentle sadness of millions of teachers who had tried to help students understand difficult concepts. "We call it sharing stories. You see, Admiral, humanity discovered something. A long time ago, the most powerful force in the universe isn't weapons or technology. It's stories. Stories can change how people think, how they see the world, how they treat each other." On his own bridge, Admiral Kethvar was watching his crew with growing alarm. His officers, soldiers who had been trained from birth to follow orders without question, were starting to ask strange questions. "Sir," said his navigation officer hesitantly, "what if we just talk to our enemies instead of fighting them? Has anyone ever tried that?" His weapons specialist looked up from her console with a confused expression. "Admiral, has anyone in? Our military ever tried apologizing when we made a mistake? I was just wondering if it might work better than threatening people." Even his communications officer was acting strangely. "Sir, do you think they have snacks on the human evacuation ships? Some of these broadcasts mention something called chocolate chip cookies, and they sound really good," the Admiral realized, with growing panic that his own crew was being affected by whatever Jiwoo was doing. These trained warriors were starting to think about concepts that had no place in military life. Concepts like friendship, forgiveness, and sharing food with enemies. "Stop this," he demanded. "Stop whatever you're doing to my people." "I'm not doing anything to them," Jiwoo replied gently. "I'm just giving them stories to think about. Stories about different ways of solving problems, different ways of relating to other people. Your crew is choosing what to do with those stories all on their own." The truth was becoming clear in the most terrifying way possible. Jiwoo wasn't controlling anyone's mind or forcing anyone to change. She was simply exposing the Zephyrian Empire to something they had never experienced before, the idea that there might be better ways to live than through conquest and domination. And across the Empire, people were starting to believe those ideas. Then came Jiwoo's final transmission, broadcast not just to the Zephyrian fleet, but to every connected device in the known galaxy. Her voice reached planets that had never heard of humans, civilizations that existed in distant star systems, peoples who had spent centuries fighting their own wars and conquests. "This is Earth's last broadcast," she announced, "and it isn't surrender, it's an invitation." Her words were accompanied by images of the most beautiful things humanity had ever created: art, music, literature, architecture, moments of love and friendship and wonder. But more than that, the broadcast carried the emotions behind those creations, the hope and joy and determination that had driven humans to build beautiful things even in difficult times. "We're building a new library among the stars," Jiwoo continued, "and every species, every story, every dreamer is welcome. Because the best revenge against those who would silence voices is to make sure everyone learns to sing." The message spread through the galaxy faster than any military conquest ever could. It reached species that had been at war for generations, and made them wonder if there might be better ways to solve their problems. It touched the hearts of beings who had forgotten what it felt like to hope for something better than endless conflict. And somewhere among the stars, the human evacuation ships that had fled Earth received the message too. They began turning around, heading not back to Earth but toward wherever Jiwoo, the collective consciousness of their people, had decided their next chapter should begin. The greatest revenge wasn't destruction or conquest. It was transformation through the sheer unstoppable force of really good storytelling, and the story was just beginning.